All right, let's dive into MicroStrategy. You guys wanted to know more about their Bitcoin play, their Bitcoin treasury.
Yeah.
How's it working out for them?
Yeah, it's a pretty wild story.
Yeah, we're going to break it all down. How did a software company end up with so much Bitcoin? And are they really beating the market like they claim?
It is a very interesting case study. They're basically trying to see if Bitcoin can be like the main thing in a company's treasury. Not just like a little side bet, but like a core part of their strategy.
Okay, well, right off the bat, they have a lot of Bitcoin. As of a few days ago, October 29th, 2024, they hold 252,220 Bitcoins.
Wow.
That's like a small country's GDP in digital gold.
It is.
So how did they end up with so much? What's the plan here?
Well, MicroStrategy's whole thing is that Bitcoin is better than holding cash, even better than gold, they say. They think it's a hedge against inflation, like when prices go up. And that it has the potential to grow a lot faster than other assets.
Right. Their CEO, Michael Saylor, he's pretty loud about this.
Oh, yeah. He's like Bitcoin's biggest cheerleader.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly.
When did this all start?
They started buying Bitcoin back in Q3 2020.
Oh, wow. So like right when the pandemic was hitting?
Yep, and they've just kept buying more and more, even when the market was going down.
So they're in it for the long haul, it seems like.
Definitely seems that way.
But they're not just using like company profits to buy all this Bitcoin, right? I was reading something about them taking on debt.
Oh, yeah, you're right. To buy Bitcoin even faster, they're doing something called intelligent leverage.
Intelligent leverage, okay.
Basically, it means they're issuing corporate debt.
Which is?
It's like borrowing money, but specifically convertible debt.
Convertible.
Yeah, so later it can be turned into equity, like shares of the company.
Gotcha.
And they use that money to buy even more Bitcoin.
So taking on billions in debt to buy Bitcoin?
Yep.
That's pretty risky now.
Oh, it absolutely is high risk, but also potentially high reward.
High risk, high reward, the classic.
Right. If Bitcoin goes way up in price, they could make a killing.
Way more than if they just use their own cash.
Exactly.
But the flip side.
If Bitcoin crashes, they're stuck with all that debt.
And that could be disastrous.
Yeah, it could be really bad for them.
So it's a tightrope walk for sure. How are they even measuring if this intelligent leverage thing is working? I thought they have this weird metric, BTC yield.
BTC yield, yeah, that's their own special thing. It's not like a regular yield you see in finance.
Right, like dividends or something.
Yeah, it's basically how much their Bitcoin holdings grow compared to their shares outstanding.
Okay, so like if they have 100 shares and the Bitcoin value goes up by 10%.
Then their BTC yield would reflect that growth in some way.
So it's about how their Bitcoin bet is affecting the company's value.
Exactly.
They're trying to show that this whole thing is actually making money for shareholders.
Right, and trying to make the case that their Bitcoin strategy is a good one.
So how's that BTC yield looking?
Well, their year-to-date for 2024 is 17.8%.
17.8%? Whoa.
Which, sounds pretty good.
It does. Yeah. But is it actually a good measure of their, overall health? Because we're not factoring in that huge debt they took on.
You're right, that's the catch. BTC yield shows how they're set up to gain from Bitcoin going up, but it doesn't show the whole picture of their finances.
So it's more like a tool to track one specific thing.
Exactly.
Not like a total scorecard of how well they're doing.
Right. For that, you got to look at their financial statements, their debt, all that stuff.
Okay, so we've got MicroStrategy betting big on Bitcoin, using debt to try to win even bigger. Now, they claim they're beating the market, not just Bitcoin itself, but also the S&P 500.
The S&P 500? Wow.
And even those top tech stocks, the Magnificent Seven, I think they're called.
Right, like Apple, Microsoft, those guys.
Since they started buying Bitcoin in 2020, they say they've done better than all of them. Are they being truthful?
Their stock price has definitely gone up a lot since they started this.
It has.
But we got to remember, their stock price is basically tied to the price of Bitcoin.
So if Bitcoin goes up, their stock goes up.
And if Bitcoin goes down, their stock goes down.
So they're riding the Bitcoin wave.
Pretty much, yeah. So their BTC yield and their stock price might look amazing right now.
Right.
But it's all because of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin takes a dive, their whole strategy could fall apart.
So there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
Oh, definitely.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dig deeper into the risks and potential rewards of MicroStrategy's Bitcoin gamble. Stay with us.
What do you do with the Bitcoin besides it just gather value?
Real estate developers in New York City, they're not buying the real estate because they want to live in it.
But most of the people who are buying assets at some point want to sell the assets at a profit.
People that use fiat currency as a store of value. We call them poor. We call them poor. People that use fiat currency, we call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. There's a name for them. We call them poor. We call them poor. Okay? Right, like, the point is, if you have the superior asset, it's going up forever, Laura. Forever.
Right, but we can all look Bitcoin sort of as
Forever, Laura. People that use fiat currency as a store of value, we call them poor. We call them poor. People that use fiat currency, we call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. There's a name for them. We call them poor. 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 Okay.
All right, so we're back, and we're trying to figure out if MicroStrategy is a genius or a gamble.
Right, because just looking at stock price or BTC yield doesn't tell the whole story.
Exactly. What else should we be thinking about when we look at their strategy?
Well, for one thing, they have a lot of debt, and they're planning to take on even more.
Wait, seriously, how much debt are we talking?
So they already have a lot to buy all that Bitcoin, but they just announced this 2121 plan.
121 plan?
Yeah, it's like, Brad, they want to raise another $42 billion.
$42 billion?
Yeah, $21 billion from equity and $21 billion from fixed income.
Okay, hold up. Fixed income, for those of us who don't speak Wall Street lingo.
Sure, fixed income is like investments that pay a set amount over time, like bonds,
Okay, so they want to borrow a ton more money.
on top of what they already owe.
Isn't that, like, insanely risky?
It's definitely a bold move, you could say that.
Bold? That's one word for it.
But they're basically doubling down on their Bitcoin bet.
What do they think is going to happen? That Bitcoin is going to explode in price or something?
They believe Bitcoin is still early in its adoption, and that the price could still go way, way up.
So they're trying to maximize their gains.
Exactly. They want to be holding as much Bitcoin as possible when that happens.
All right, let's play this out. Let's say they're right and Bitcoin goes to the moon.
To the moon.
What does that mean for MicroStrategy? What's the best case scenario?
Well, if Bitcoin really becomes like the new gold, like a global store of value that everyone trusts, then their Bitcoin holdings could be worth like astronomically more.
Way more than their debt?
Oh, yeah, potentially.
So they could become like a financial giant,
they could.
all because of this risky Bitcoin bet.
Exactly. It's like the ultimate payoff.
And they would be the first ones to do it this way.
Yeah, the pioneers of corporate Bitcoin treasuries.
That's a pretty cool legacy if they can pull it off.
It would be.
But okay, flip side again. What if they're wrong and Bitcoin tanks?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? If Bitcoin crashes, they're in deep trouble.
Because of all the debt.
Yeah, the debt would be a huge burden. They might have to like restructure the whole company.
Restructure meaning?
Like sell off assets, lay off employees, that kind of thing.
And in the worst case scenario,
Bankruptcy.
so they're either going to be heroes or zeros, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's not a lot of room for in between.
That's what happens when you take big risks.
All right, so let's step back from MicroStrategy for a second.
Yeah.
Think bigger picture. What does this whole thing tell us, no matter what happens to them?
Well, it definitely shows that Bitcoin is making people think differently.
About how companies handle their money.
Yeah, like what assets should they hold? How much risk should they take?
Even if MicroStrategy fails, they've started a conversation.
A conversation that's not going away.
They're like throwing a rock in a pond, and the ripples are going out everywhere.
That's a great way to put it.
They're pushing the limits of what's considered normal in finance,
Right, and people are watching to see what happens.
whether they succeed or crash and burn.
Either way, their story will be told for years to come.
What about the impact on Bitcoin itself? Like if this big public company makes it work with Bitcoin, could that change how other companies see Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It could make it seem more legit, less risky,
Right, more companies might start thinking, hey, maybe we should have some Bitcoin too.
and that could drive up the price even more, right?
Exactly, it could create a whole new wave of adoption.
Wow, so MicroStrategy is kind of a domino.
A domino that could set off a chain reaction.
Okay, we've thrown a lot of information at everyone today. Let's try to sum it all up. What are the key takeaways here?
So first off, MicroStrategy is making a huge e-bet on Bitcoin. They're putting their money where their mouth is, taking on a lot of debt to do it.
They're saying Bitcoin is better than cash, better than gold,
When they're trying to prove it with this whole BTC yield thing.
which, remember, is just one way to measure how their strategy is doing.
Right, it doesn't show everything.
But it does highlight how they're trying to benefit from Bitcoin going up.
But, and this is a big but,
There's always a but.
their success is basically tied to Bitcoin's success.
So if Bitcoin crashes, they crash.
Yep, it's that simple.
And with all that debt, it would be a really hard fall.
Yeah, they could lose a lot.
But on the other hand, if Bitcoin skyrockets
They could make history.
and change the way companies think about money forever,
They really could.
it's a crazy story.
It is.
And it's not over yet.
Not by a long shot.
It's definitely a story everyone's watching. Some people think MicroStrategy is brilliant, ahead of the curve.
And others think they're gonna go broke.
It's kind of hard to say who's right.
Yeah, it's really unpredictable.
It's one of those wait-and-see situations for sure. But even just looking at this now, what are the lessons here? Like, what can our listeners take away from all this?
Well, I think the biggest thing is it shows how powerful Bitcoin could be. Like, it's shaking things up. Even if you don't believe in Bitcoin as a, currency or whatever.
It's making everyone rethink things.
Exactly.
The way companies handle their money, how we invest, all of that. It's a reminder that things change.
Oh, yeah.
And the people who are willing to adapt, they might be the ones who come out on top.
But it's also a reminder to be careful.
Right. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And don't get in over your head with debt.
Even if you think you're going to make a ton of money, you got to manage that risk.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on MicroStrategy, I keep coming back to this question. What if they're right? What if this whole Bitcoin thing really takes off?
It would change everything.
Will other companies start doing the same thing?
Getting rid of their cash, buying Bitcoin instead.
It's possible.
Or what if it all goes wrong?
What if Bitcoin crashes and they lose everything?
Will that scare everyone else away?
Will it be a cautionary tale?
Yeah, like, don't mess with Bitcoin. Stick to what you know.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But either way, it's proof that the financial world is constantly changing.
Always evolving.
There's always something new happening, some new innovation.
It's exciting, but also a little bit scary.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for our deep dive on MicroStrategy. We talked about their intelligent leverage strategy, their BTC yield, and we looked at the risks and rewards of betting big on Bitcoin.
It's a fascinating story, and it's just getting started.
Exactly. We'll have to revisit this in the future and see how it all plays out. Hopefully, this deep dive gave you a better understanding of what MicroStrategy is doing and why it matters.
There are a lot of things to consider here.
But the most important thing is to stay informed.
Keep learning, keep asking questions.
And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover the next big thing before everyone else.
Who knows? You might even be the next MicroStrategy.
All right. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.